there's a strong sense of community. With the limited involvement I've had with people, particularly those who are helping out at the school and stuff, there seems to be a strong sense of we belong here and we're in this together.
Some way of increasing people's pride in living here and getting that message out to the rest of the city.
As I immersed myself in the local context and got to know the people that were working in the community, the fact that they weren't getting the resources they needed really as their fair share of being part of London was surprising to me.
Nice, affordable housing. You're not just getting by, like you actually want to live there.
And then I told our superintendent we weren't renewing our lease because we bought a house on Lorne Avenue, and he said, "My God, can you get out of it?" I was like, "Come on, what's this all about?"
And this area is just struggling. I mean, we've been trying to attract tenants, and when we tell the tenants what the rent, we're not trying to make very much money on these buildings. We're just trying to cover the cost of the buildings. And once you mention the tax rate, they just run away because they just can't afford the taxes.
And from what I hear, there's a lot of authenticity in this community. That people are willing to be real. I've heard it in several of the groups. People are willing to be real with one another.
With respect to the challenges that this community has faced over the past 30 years, I think that you can probably look at what happens when a community becomes marginalised. There was a downward spiral, social and economic spiral, that began to happen in the area from the early 80s onwards, and that was for a variety of reasons. But what we ended up with was a commercial corridor where existing businesses were struggling to keep their customer base. Businesses moved out of the area. Property owners who were renting properties were no longer in the position to be able to invest in the upkeep of their buildings. So over a period of years, the whole infrastructure of the corridor began to deteriorate. At the same time as that happened within the residential community, there was high levels of, and continued to be high levels of, unemployment. The result of it was that many of the networks and structures that more affluent neighbourhoods have to take care of the well-being of their community became either exhausted or were never there in the first place. And so in terms of being able to ensure that the agenda for this community and the needs and interests of this community were met within the broader London community, we lost our voice. And we didn't have any real structures in place that could ensure that the needs and interests of this part of the city were taken care of.
The BIA's revitalization efforts have always been strong over the years. It's just that our resources have been limited. Our strength for this project probably comes from John Fleming and his passion for the revitalization plan that his group has produced for us. But after conversing with him and many other conversations following that, there just seemed to be a very natural fit there with the OPPI, the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, which John is a member of, who has been, that organization has been spearheading this revitalization plan, and the BIA. And from there, our thoughts and our ideas certainly meshed with theirs. And I think this revitalization plan was culminated from that initial meeting.
When we started the project, we had a look at what Sarah was presenting us. We realized the project had the kind of complexity we were looking for, because planning is often thought of as land use planning, but it really isn't simply land use planning. The Ontario Professional Planning Institute uses planners, or I should say includes planners, in a variety of fields, which include recreational planning, economic planning, land use planning, even planning that's directed towards occupation and social issues. So we felt that Sarah's problem actually worked very well because it went outside simply design and land use planning issues, and gave us an opportunity to address actually the social impact of policy, and to actually look how policy and form could be directed to improve some very specific social and economic problems for the neighborhood and to lead to core revitalization.
It's giving people an opportunity to, as planners professionally, give back to the community or give something to the community. We do that, I think, through our profession anyway, but this is an additional opportunity and something that we can give our own volunteer time to, and I think that's a big part of this. One thing that obviously I think that we need to do is a pretty comprehensive inventory of what we have, and we have to look at what type of variables we want to include in that inventory.
Once we hear from you what we need to be doing, then we can do that. We can bring the people in. If you give us an idea of the kinds of things that you need to hear from, like what kind of involvement do you want to have or to see them have?
Beal has a lot of art students, and if they were like allowed to, I'm sure they like. There'd probably be people that would volunteer to paint places, especially if people saw it and liked it and knew who it was and stuff like that. And I think it would just make things look nicer.
It's like it's settled and it's permanent and it's here and it has some. The roots are very deep here.
The way the wards are organized here, this neighborhood is divided up into 3 different wards. And the boundary line runs down Dundas here, and it runs on Adelaide, okay? So and you were touching on it there. So what happens is, the way the wards are designed in London, they're pie-shaped, and we're the narrow end of the pie, and the wide end of the pie is the suburbs. So in each ward...
That doesn't make any sense.
It does not make any sense. It's atrocious, and that's a really big political obstacle. So what happens is that the house owners in the suburbs control the politics of the ward. In other cities, they have downtown core wards, and they're done in a square, and that's what we need here, is because then you'd have a councillor or 2 who knew the ward and understood the ward and got resources for the ward, and the people in the neighborhood would carry the vote.
Like our jobs, we could be helping restoring the buildings. That could be paid for helping clean those out and painting and stuff.
There are certain shops in this neighborhood already that we'd like to see a lot more of. We'd like to see a lot more ethnic restaurants, a lot more antique stores, a lot more furniture stores.
And a lot, no more furniture. There's too much furniture.
It depends on what kind of furniture you're talking about. It's really sounding like more of an old European neighborhood, or a very ethnic area, where you have flower shops, you have coffee shops, you have, it's more culturally based center.
Right.
The East End Revitalization Project, I've kind of been on board, I guess you could say, since the beginning, and went to the groups and have talked to Sarah, of course. And my hope all along is, again, to just give the East End a positive image. And also, I think what's really important about this area is the diversity and like the little shops and things like that. And I think it's really important that we bring attention to those and all the positive aspects.
Our greatest accomplishment to date is pretty clear to me, and that's been the engagement of the community. When a group such as ours sets out to do a volunteer project like this, it's very easy to get people together, focus a lot of energy on a project, and create a product that sits on a shelf. What we've been able to do here is, together with Sarah Merritt, who's really been instrumental in us connecting with the community, we have been able to interact with the community. We've been able to engage the community, and they've been able to engage us. And that has really permeated this entire process. Everything from working with the London Intercommunity Health Centre, working in their offices with some of their staff, to having different restaurants take us in and gather some excitement through just being visible in the community, to some great community meetings, one of which we had about 150 people attend, and it was just a wonderful event with the community.
Say listen, please. Cheers.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for coming out tonight. This is a wonderful turnout. This is really a presentation of what you told us. The presentation of 11 sessions of focus groups from the community of London and East London as a whole. And this is sort of the culmination of those findings. And we are presenting them here today in a number of different capacities. So just sit back and enjoy yourselves. I hope everyone has a drink and some refreshments and food. There is plenty of it to go around.
It's these conversations and the variety of spaces that allow them that truly connect us into what can be called a community. Along with Todd Hutchinson's, a series of 6 cups were designed with anecdotal conversations printed on them. Each of these featured excerpts from conversations over coffee with community members, referencing memories or expressions of the geographical region known as East of Adelaide.
Mom, don't look now, but isn't that Cynthia Hill coming out of the Chateau Nouveau?
And pray do tell
It
who.
looks like she bought the whole store out.
Well, pray do tell who is Cynthia Hill?
She is only one of the most celebrated Canadian actresses. She was featured at Stratford Festival this year, and she was there last year as well, I think. Imagine shopping in Old East Village. We're getting quite a solid reputation down here.
Quick word on Sarah. When she was introduced, it sounded like the Sarah Merritt fan club is out there. I'm just wondering where I sign up, because she's fabulous. She is really the reason that we're here. We had a number of applicants, people that were asking us to come to their community, and we decided to come here because she sold us that this was the place to come to help out, to make a difference, and that's what we hope to do. But you'll see in your agenda, we emphasize this very much, that there are no silver bullet solutions, something that takes time. And I know that you've been through a lot of processes where there's a plan at the end of the process, and you maybe haven't seen the change that you've been looking for. Well, we're here to tell you that there just is no plan that will change everything, but there is a starting point towards regeneration and transition of the corridor and regenerating the community. And you certainly have it in Sarah Merritt and her team. You really have the prospects of an excellent process which will lead towards that, which is much more than a plan. It has an implementation component. It is rooted in the community and comes from you, and that's the most important thing. Beyond what we as experts are providing, that is much more important, what comes from you, what your vision is for the community. Don't be shy. Really what we need to do, what we need from you to do our job well, is to understand your vision and how we might be able to interpret that from our perspective. The play was great. We got the community consultation report, and we've all reviewed it. And now this is your opportunity our opportunity for two-way dialogue. We asked people to come down, pay their accommodation, their travel, to come down. That's the institute that did this. From out of town, stay here for 2 days. We did prepare an extensive background report. We prepared extensive maps and analysis, and pass those along to the planners that were going to be coming down to London to help. We also arranged for a bus tour of the surrounding area, as well as a walking tour of the area itself. And then we had our community meetings.
This was a very successful initiative that turned a very problematic area that was used as parking and dumping into affordable housing.
But let's talk about movement, about people. What you know, about cars first, and about people. This is the most primary interest for pedestrians, sort of, you know, beautiful streetscape, you know, and quality of sidewalks and everything. And you know, when you come here, there's nothing to keep you, you know, walking. This is dead space. This is dead space for pedestrians. This is 100%.
Yeah, this is where most of the people are.
It really,
in terms of, I mean, anybody that's here right now.
Yes.
That comes into the neighborhood.
Yes. But it doesn't contribute to quality of street life. You know,
visibility and feeling of security is really important at the entryway.
Now, the other component that we've got to watch too is you don't want this parking recreating what we're trying to mitigate by turning this to two-way traffic. You don't want these parking lots serving as a barrier from separating the residences from the street front.
Sure.
So if your thought, John, of getting a through way is a good one, but then there has to be well-defined ways to cross it.
So pedestrian. Well, as there is here, I think there's a comfort level in moving across this type of parking lot because it's.
Can you go? Well, that is a linkage there. Now that's privately.
We should mark those links.
From our perspective, what this plan has done is it gave us the impetus to mobilise the community who, over the number of years, I've been working in the neighbourhood now for 10 years, it gave us the impetus to mobilise the community to address a lot of issues that over the past 10 years we had already heard about. But I think one of the things that we need to be really careful about is we can't talk as if this revitalisation initiative is the only thing that's been happening in East London, because we've got a real history of community involvement and community activism. I think what this particular initiative does is it pulls together the needs and interests of the residential community and the commercial community, and it recruits many of the networks that we built in the neighbourhood through the health centre around the support of children and seniors into the revitalisation initiative. So I think what this initiative does is it pulls together all of the sectors and all of the groups who've been working away, beavering away in this neighbourhood to take care of the needs and interests of the community.
Community. This is an initiative that's a commercial revitalisation initiative. But how this one differs from many others is that the BIA have said that we can't do commercial revitalisation if we don't look at our whole community. So we're using community development principles to accomplish a commercial development initiative. What that means is that we're going to be assisting with the social issues that are in our community and with the economic issues that are in our community as well. Community with each other and respect for the community is what people talked about.
Finally, how does this plan fit into the BIA's efforts? This plan has been prepared by PACT for the BIA. The BIA is engaged in a major revitalization effort for the Old East Village, and this plan is just one piece of it. The BIA is doing a lot of other things. I mean, they've conducted the focus groups, they've got websites that they put together. They've been working with the community and the city in terms of communication and dialogue, trying to get things going. So this is just one very we hope important, but just one piece of the overall picture. And it's really intended to provide a strategy that will give both short-term and long-term direction, priorities, and ideas for actions and next steps. So it's intended to help the BIA move forward, the BIA and the community move forward with future actions, and it's intended to augment what the BIA has already done. So it's now up to the BIA to utilize this report and the information in it in the way that they see fit and to see how it fits within their long-term goals.
Queens has turned into a one-way arterial, and one-way arterials do two things. You don't do them in residential areas. I mean, hello? I don't understand why it's even there. And when you turn something into two-lane one-way, the speed goes from 50 to 80 in about 30 seconds. Especially when you look at Queens and it's straight as a die. So let's race. And there have been fatalities. One fatality that I can think of is the lots of speeding tickets handed out there. It's not a healthy thing to do, and the value goes down. Who wants to live on a raceway? And it hurts the value of the property. It makes it less desirable. But the worst thing that happened, and when this changed, it was quite interesting. It was like killing two birds with one stone, or killing two positives with one negative. All the traffic was taken off Dundas and put onto Queens. So all the traffic comes off the retail street, which is supposed to have a lot of traffic, and which needs a lot of traffic to survive, and is put onto a residential street which doesn't need traffic at all, doesn't want traffic. In fact, it's extremely dangerous for it to have traffic. And if you ever drive on in the morning between the hours of 8 and 9 and see all the little kids who are going to Lorne, and I'm not dramatizing, they are little kids because it's an elementary school, this is not a safe condition. It really isn't, because the drivers are focused on going straight ahead. So make it one way after you get past Adelaide or Maitland, where you already have Queens running through a commercial area. That makes sense. But don't do it through a residential area and screw up the residential, and don't take it off Dundas and screw up the retail that's remaining, because that was the part that needs the traffic.
And for this report to have effect, the strategy that we outlined, but also the strategy that you develop from this report, has to have buy-in. If you were to take a look at the community as a whole, the single biggest landowner within this area is the collective members of the community itself. The residential property owners, as a neighborhood, as a community, are the biggest single landowner. After that, the next biggest shareholder is very clearly the Western Fair. And after that, the next biggest shareholder is the city, not just in terms of streets, but also in terms of parking, which they own as well, which was originally acquired to service and promote the commercial uses on Dundas Street. Those three groups, the residents, the Western Fair, and the city, are the primary stakeholders in this. For this plan to work, and for any plan which is developed out of it to work, there has to be buy-in from the stakeholders. Everybody has to be prepared to some degree to pony up their time, their effort, or in some cases their money to make this thing work. If you want a better place, the responsibility is yours, and it's between those stakeholders. Now, we can't participate in that for objective reasons, but what we are interested in doing is monitoring. And monitoring is always the last stage of the planning process. We will come back a year from now, and we will do a similar exercise. It's going to be quicker, but that similar exercise, in fact, is going to be to attempt to map exactly what change has taken place. This is valuable to us, not to give you a report card. It's valuable for us to give ourselves a report card. Was what we wrote usable? Did it help the community? Those are things that we use to evaluate our own performance.
I think we'll know that this was a success, this plan was a success, if it's something that a whole lot of people can rally around, the numbers of people rallying around specific issues. We've seen some evidence already that that's the case, that people are really invested and there are some real common themes in what people have said in focus groups, whether they happened here at the health center or at some of the churches or some of the other locations. So there's already good reason to believe that there are going to be masses of people invested in particular things in this plan.
The turnaround in the credibility or image of the neighborhood, at least the start of the turnaround, I think has been the willingness of some fairly significant players in other parts of the community to step forward and offer help. I think the first real coup for the BIA study group, and this was before I got involved, was getting the planners action team on board and having them willing to do a fairly significant study on the neighborhood. That has provided tremendous leverage for getting the neighborhood access to people that otherwise, understand previously, I'd pretty much ignored them. not denying resources, but certainly not facilitating access to resources. So I think that getting the PACT team on board, getting that study started was a major coup. Having HRDC willing to kick in some significant funding as well on a multi-year basis sends a message to the rest of the community as well. The federal government has always been a strong supporter of grassroots initiatives, and when they commit resources to a particular neighborhood, that sends a message to the rest of the community.
I have to say, though, I'm extremely happy with the product that we've ended up with. I think that the solutions that we've put on the table, the plan that we've come up with, is one which is not superficial. It's multi-layered. It goes to the heart of the problems that are underlying the commercial corridor, and it's anything but superficial. It's not a simple design analysis or design solution. It's one that integrates design with economic issues and social issues and many others as well. And as I said, I'm very satisfied and quite proud of what we've produced as a product. And I know this is the key. You can produce a product, but unless you have somebody to take it forward and live by that plan and work with that plan and make it a reality, it's really not worth much at all. But I know that Sarah Merritt is committed, and the BIA is committed to making this this plan come to life.
My sense is that we've probably got 2 videos, to be honest, because I think we've got the conceptualization when we all sat around and talked about doing something without knowing, and then there was a whole study process, and then once we got on all of that work to get people involved and to really, get enough information and ideas to those planners so that when they did their piece that it really addressed what it was people wanted to see in the community. There was that, but then there was the October the 18th when the planners presented the plan to the community.
Thank you very much to you, Michael.
They said, well, there you go. Well, they are coming back. We didn't say it as black and white as that, but then we had the whole implementation piece. I mean, it's been a combination of strategic planning and serendipity, hasn't it? For example, with the housing initiative, the city gave us that affordable housing money, and at the same time Canada Mortgage and Housing has released its funding, which is making it possible for us to access more funding. We didn't know when we started that out that was going to happen. We didn't know when we started out that we were going to have this really neat crime prevention initiative.
Well, these are all things that have sprung off the one plan and have fed into it as well, and just met the needs of the community, whether it's residential or the business community.
And I think the thing about the plan was when the planners gave us that plan, they've always said, this is a plan for you to do with what you can. You've got to make this plan work for you and your community. But what that plan did was it gave us something to go to people with. It's easier to go to a group or an organisation and say, here's what we want to do, and here's your piece of it, here's where we think you can help, as opposed to going to people and saying, we're really in trouble over here, can you help us? So that plan helped to shape our thinking, but it also helped to shape the thinking of the various groups that have become involved with us, like the City of London, the bylaw enforcement group, the London Police Services with the crime prevention programme, and certainly the affordable housing piece.
My wife and I moved to Old East almost 15 years ago, and we've noticed continual improvement over the years. We were especially pleased with the work of the PACT committee and the opportunity to take part in their information gathering sessions and their presentations to the community. And we're already seeing positive spin-offs, such as the initiative to have a heritage designation for the area and the creation of the Old East Village Association. The association has already set up a number of committees, one of which I belong to, the Neighborhood Watch, and I've found that my participation in the committee has allowed me to meet a number of my neighbors and as well increased my sense of community.
If I had a magic wand to change something about the East End, I guess I would I would make it so that there's more businesses instead of empty storefronts, and I guess make some of the businesses more accessible. So I guess I would try and make it just more populated, because the stores that are there are really good, but at the same time there's ones that are neglected and forgotten about and whatnot. So I would try and just really fill it up so it feels very full and inviting. So I would really try, that's what I would like to see for the East End, is like more business, I guess, and then therefore bringing in more people to just make it a really nice environment.